Okay, so without further ado, I'm sure we're all keen to hear them. I'll ask KIRSTEN MOREL to address the Assembly.
Yeah. Constable, fellow candidates, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's probably best to start by explaining why I'm standing for election. To be honest, there are two very simple reasons. The first is that I love this parish, and the second is that I love this island. It is those two things that I believe that we all have in common, and which have brought us all here this evening. We burn with pride for our island and the parish of St Lawrence, and we want them both to continue to prosper. We're a small island that has achieved great things, and I truly believe that our parish communities, where we combine the energy of youth with the wisdom of experience, are our greatest source of strength. And as Deputy for St Lawrence, my focus will be to work for you, my fellow parishioners, to be accessible, to be the bridge between you and an often distant government. I'm committed to being available to parishioners, to keeping you all updated with the goings-on in the States of Jersey, and to ensuring that your voices are heard by government. In my opinion, these factors represent the bottom line for every deputy. You will see in my manifesto, which is launched here this evening, that I have committed to publishing regular newsletters that keep you all up to date with matters before the States. I will hold regular surgeries so everyone can speak with me in confidence. These are commitments that you can measure me by, but on its own, being a good representative is not enough. Today, Jersey faces serious challenges. The costs of living, housing, and healthcare are increasing faster than our incomes. We've seen this week that national and international pressures threaten not only the future of our finance industry, but also the very constitutional standing of the island that we love. As we look into the future, we all have to cope with the transformation to a digital society and a growing as well as an ageing population that is putting ever more pressure on our environment and the island's infrastructure. To negotiate these successfully, we need a new generation of politicians who are experienced, who are capable, and perhaps most importantly, who are willing to work with others from all sides of the political spectrum for the good of this island. In my manifesto, you'll find my views on a range of subjects, many of them centred on the need to increase Jersey's strategic strength and self-reliance at a time when the tectonic plates of global power are shifting. A strategic approach to trade will see us diversify our economy and protect our food supplies by increasing commerce with Brittany and Normandy. While in healthcare, we must reduce costs by promoting healthier lifestyles and delivering community-based care. In education, our teachers must be freed from the burden of administration so they can concentrate on helping our children gain the knowledge and skills that they need to live fulfilling lives. We must also protect our energy supplies, become a petrol-free island, and encourage renewable energy generation. As we become increasingly digitised, so the government must put the people of Jersey at the heart of these changes by creating a Bill of Digital Rights that protect us from the worst of Silicon Valley whilst enabling us to embrace its best. A silo-free, collaborative States of Jersey can deliver a stronger, more resilient island that is ready to embrace the future and overcome its challenges. But to realise this vision, we need people in the States of Jersey who are able to analyse policy, ask the questions that matter, and provide the critical feedback that will ensure we become an even better place than we are today. As a husband, father, and a business owner, as someone who has lived the vast majority of my life in St Lawrence, but who has travelled the world, worked and studied abroad, but someone who has always returned home, I believe I have the experience, abilities, and the vision to represent you and to guide our parish, our island, through these challenging times, and to lead us to a more prosperous future. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you agree, and on May the 16th, I ask that you vote for me as your deputy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I call Sarah.
Mine, I'm afraid, is far more off the cuff. Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to meet you all again. My journey started in 2014 when I was studying social sciences, the degree at Highlands College, which is from the University of Plymouth. And I realised at that point that social science research is actually critical for policymakers. They need to understand how it works, how it is done, and how it can be applied to the policies that we make. That's where I started out. Since then, I have been shouting from the sidelines at politicians and not getting a great deal of response. And the voice of conscience in my head said to me, are you really doing enough? Are you doing enough to make your voice heard? And the conclusion I came to was that no, the only way for me to actually affect change was to take part in it, to go to the root of the problem. And so here I am before you now. I am a single parent. I have 2 jobs. I have a daughter in St. Lawrence School. Is that about all you need to know about me? I'm a person who has real empathy and real life experience of what it's like to live on a low income. That may not affect many of you in this room, but it certainly does affect some of our parish. I would like to say that experience and in business perhaps and in the boardroom does not add up to integrity, nor does it add up to empathy with people. Thank you. And I would like to offer up those qualities of myself, perhaps, to you. I too am a person who likes to communicate with people, and I want to take your feedback and I want to take your ideas and their solutions because I know that they are out there amongst the people, but maybe they don't get heard enough. Okay. As for the policy, I'm running for the Reform Party because I do believe that there are changes that can be made within our government, maybe only small changes, maybe large changes, but change is coming and we need to embrace it for what it is. I support the policies on tax reform, which is a biggie for some of you. That is going to bring in the funding to send your children and your grandchildren to university. Every child in this island should have the right to a free university education. I'm interested in housing. I think that we need to be putting some of the empty properties that are in this island back into the housing stock. I believe that we need to have more affordable housing and that we're missing an opportunity if we don't embrace green technology in just bringing down the cost of living for people. I want to see islanders able to choose their own path of getting off the grid if they want to, choose their own energy sources, and not be penalised for doing so. I'm not going to say a great deal more. I think it's more important that you be able to ask us questions and we be able to answer them. So now I'm going to hand over to Gregory.
Thank you, Sarah. And she has already called Gregory for us. So, Gregory, you have the floor.
Good evening. My name is here. I think you will recognize me. I'm a businessman born in France, and I've lived all over the world and worked in many different industries. I am now a Jersey citizen, and I've lived in the Channel Islands for almost 15 years. Since 2013, I have been honored to serve the parishioners of St. Lawrence, first as a constable's officer, and subsequently as a centenier. These roles have seen me closely involved in parish affairs at many levels and have brought me into close contact with parishioners. I am here to defend the parish system against further centralization, and I hope to carry the voices of the parishioners of St. Lawrence to the State's Chamber. I welcome communication and would enjoy having well-attended surgeries to exchange views about current affairs. I believe strongly in preserving the identity and independence of Jersey. I am dismayed at the efforts to change it in a misguided hope that being more like the UK or more like France will make us better. We can find a Jersey solution to Jersey problems.
Thank you. So we've heard from the three candidates. What I didn't say at the beginning was that the hustings are being filmed, and you will be able to watch them back on the vote.je website. When I spoke to the candidates earlier, they're quite happy to sit here for as long as we have questions from the floor. So this evening is about all of us being able to find out more, or as much as possible as we can, about our potential deputorial representatives. So I'm going to take questions from the floor now. As I said earlier, microphones will be handed around. Eddie will be looking after this side of the room, and Dave will be looking after this side of the room. If you can raise your hand, I'll call you in the order that I see you. And if you can state your name, please, when you ask your question. The only thing regarding the questions is that when you ask it, it should be something that can be answered by all three candidates. Please don't direct a question simply to one or other of them. Okay, so those are the ground rules. Who is the first to start this evening? Oh dear, deafening silence. Okay, I see Dr. Mara in the front, Eddie. So if you can just say your name, please.
My name is Paul Mara. I'd like to ask the candidates, given the findings of the care inquiry, would the candidates consider it, let me rephrase that, considering the outcomes and findings of the care inquiry, do the candidates think that the States of Jersey Assembly should apologise to former Senator Stuart Sibley and the former Chief Officer of the States of Jersey Police, Mr. Graham Power, QPM?
Thank you. So that's Dr. Mara's question. We're going to start this evening with Sarah.
Thank you for the question, Paul. First thing I would say is that when we elect a chief minister next time round, if I am elected, I will only be backing one who will immediately be standing by the findings of the care inquiry. Should Stuart Sibley get an apology? Unequivocally, yes. Will he also offer an apology for the neglect of renewing his driving licence? A simple apology at the time might have got him out of a lot of trouble. And as to the question of the police officer you mentioned, I'm not of an opinion on that, but I will offer it to my fellow candidates.
Fantastic question to begin with. As you've noticed, you have three completely brand new, untested politicians in front of you. So to ask us to try to fix the problems caused by our predecessors is a little bit disingenuous. I am not sure that we can answer this. It is up to the people who have created the trouble to apologize for them. And in the specific circumstances that you mentioned, personally, I would say no. No.
No, sorry. You can. What I would say is, obviously, you can chat to the candidate afterwards. Let's move on to. You said yes or no. You've had a no from Gregory. Let's move on to Kirsten.
Thank you for the question. Personally, I think when you're at the heart of politics in the way that that was being conducted at the time, it's very difficult to know exactly what is happening behind the scenes, who is saying what to whom and how. I am far more interested in the island apologising to the children that were neglected, that were abused, and taking the lessons that we have learned from the inquiry and also from the new Children's Commissioner, asking her to lead us to ensure that these things never happen again. For me, that's the priority. Stuart Sivery and Graham Power are not my priority.
Thank you. Any further questions? Surely. Okay, I see Mark Bingle, Dave, at the front here.
Good evening, Mark Bingle. We see all too often when candidates get elected for deputies, not just in this parish, other parishes, that they tend to get caught up in their political careers. And a lot of the time you go to a deputy and ask a question or for help, and you get a lot of the answer you get is conflict of interest, because they might be sitting on certain states departments or close to other politicians. So I put it to you candidates, what will set you apart from the rest to keep yourself as independent as possible and to provide the parishioners with a voice in the States Chamber?
Thank you, Mark. Can I just check that all candidates understood the question? Yes, Gregory?
I think so.
Okay, can you start by answering, please?
Okay. I think you've got three candidates here that are extremely linked with the parish, and we are all genuinely standing for the parish. It is at the heart of the reason why we're here. Whoever gets elected, if I'm part of the group, I would love to see us with the Connétable doing surgeries and presenting what we're doing in the States and hearing from the parishioners. I think it's very, very important. I've been canvassing like my fellow candidates, and I think the thing that has most stricken me is that I went out with the notion that I had to present myself to others, and it took about 3 doors knocked to understand that it wasn't about me at all, that it was about listening to what people were telling me. And I'm absolutely ready to embrace it. I think that's exactly how it should be. We are your representative.
Thank you. Call on Kirsten to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Bingham. Since March, I've had on my website that surgeries and newsletters are ways that I will ensure that I communicate with parishioners. There's no question in my mind that if I'm elected, these first 4 years will be dedicated to nothing but the parish and ensuring that your views are heard in the government. I'm interested in going into scrutiny. I'm interested in analysing what the government is doing on your behalf. I'm not interested in developing a ministerial career at this stage at all. So I know from that perspective, you won't have those conflicts from me. What's interesting about your question is that politics by its nature is about negotiating conflict. You may have one view, another parishioner may have another view, and as your elected deputy, I have to negotiate that. That's where the skill as a deputy will come in. But from my perspective, I am proudly independent. I'm standing as an independent. I've always been independent. I work for myself, but I will be dedicated to this parish. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah.
As I found myself frequently saying, Mark, on this tour of duty, I answer to my own conscience. I may stand on the party and have a basic allegiance to the things that we all believe in, which is the alleviation of poverty in this island, which does exist. I would never vote against my own conscience if it came down to it. What I believe is some of the better politicians in this island who have been voted for again and again are often the most despised by other politicians because they are 9/10 social worker and 1/10 politician. They are the ones that go out and do the legwork, talk to people in the parish, they find out what they need, they assist them in the role of advocacy with whichever state department they are having problems with. And I don't, even if there was a conflict of interest because of some panel or scrutiny work that you were doing, that would not stop me from pointing you to the right person to help you. And I believe that that is essentially what we're here for.
Thank you. Another question, please. I see Brian Rondell, Eddie.
I'd like the candidates' views on the current system of ministerial government. If they think it's the right thing to do, or if they have a different point of view, what measures would they take to try and improve it? Thank you. Brian?
Sorry, Brian, can you repeat it, please? Sarah didn't hear the first part of your question.
Forgotten what I said. I said I'd like the candidates' views on the current system of ministerial government. If they're happy with it, that's fine. If they have another point of view, what measures would they take to try and improve it?
Thank you. Have you all got that? Yep. Okay, so it's Kirsten's turn to go first.
Thank you, Mr. Rondell. Ministerial government is something which has come up a few times on the doorstep as I've been going around the parish. There's no question that there's discontent with the way it's operating at the moment. When Clothier made his recommendations, we, as is known, kind of cherry-picked parts of it, and as such, we've come up with a system which wasn't what was recommended. The problem with ministerial government, as I see it, is that it requires us to trust ministers far more than we were used to under a committee system, where we knew that people had discussed ideas before coming to decisions. Now we're asked at times to blindly trust those ministers. We see ministerial orders being made which aren't debated in Parliament in the States. And there's no doubt in my mind that if it is to continue, then ministers themselves have to earn that trust a bit more. They have to become closer to the people that they are governing, because the loss of trust is hurting the states of Jersey. What concerned me slightly just before the states broke up was that was with Charlie Parker, the new chief officer, and the change of the way they changed the government and the ministerial system to accommodate his wishes. I am willing to go in and give Charlie Parker that trust in the first instance, but I will be watching very closely. We have given one person a lot of power, and that's an uncomfortable position for me to find the island in. If you want my honest thoughts on how we can improve it, I'm not sure going back to committees is best, but perhaps we could look at Guernsey system of boards where it's kind of halfway house between ministerial and committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. I now call Sarah.
The current system allows ministers to make arbitrary decisions concerning policy without really carrying the full accountability. Therefore, perhaps what we need is to have a cabinet of sorts, as it were, attached to each minister, who then have to approve or concur with ministerial decisions. The whole system of government at the moment, of the Council of Ministers and scrutiny, and now we have party politics maybe emerging for the first time. It seems to me the whole beauty of an island system like we have, of having such a small chamber of government, is that we should be able to make decisions on things very quickly and enact laws very quickly. At the moment, that doesn't seem to happen. I would be all for more streamlining, as it were, but not taking away from accountability to individuals. And I think it's up to the electorate to hold those individuals to account. We need to hear your voice more.
Gregory.
Well, based on this, I think I would definitely vote for Mr. Morel. Yes, I agree 100% with him. Ministerial government has created silos with one person at the top taking all the decisions using ministerial orders. And We know that committees were slow to get to the mark and that the world has changed and needs a little bit faster reactions. So if we could go back to something that is a little bit in between, where the whole chamber has a say, but the ministers can act quickly, that would probably be best. There is a chance this time, with this government, with all the new people, that this might happen, because they have been burnt with the preceding one. This question, I've actually I've heard this question asked more by politicians than by the public. Everybody coming out of this government has gone and said, yes, ministers are really a problem. We have a little cabinet, they do their thing on their own, we never get a say, and it is something that we need to fix. And all the elected politicians will probably work to that end, including myself.
Thank you. Eddie, I saw John Pullo.
John Pullo, if I can ask the candidates, how can Jersey diversify its economy?
Thank you, John. The first person to answer the question is Sarah.
Diversifying is something that I think we should have looked into a very long time ago, and instead of putting all our eggs in the financial basket, so to speak. I would very much like to see us concentrating more effort into, more funding, in fact, into education, so that we skill the pool of workforce that we already had, so that that workforce can go and work in areas such as tourism, which I think still has some mileage. I would like to see our high streets regenerated, so to speak. The regeneration of the high street has not happened. We have lost 5 major UK retail outlets in the past 2 months. And as to what to do about that, I think we've had some discussions amongst ourselves about that, actually. Personally, I would like to see something done to cap commercial rents and some right of first refusal to rent increase for those who are coming to the end of their lease. What we can do to attract more business to our shores, I think that I'd really liked Kirsten's idea of going to France, looking to France for some inspiration, which is much closer and more secure than the UK at the moment. And I think that we really need to fight for that line, that one clause in the Brexit agreement, which says Jersey gets to keep its status as it is at present, so that we can carry on being a funnel of money for the City of London.
Thank you, Sarah. Gregory.
I think diversifying or changing the economy is actually one thing that Jersey has been extremely good at over its history. The world changes, the demand for different products changes, and for 1,000 years, every 50 or 70 years, Jersey would completely change what they were producing. It's something that we were very, very agile at doing. One of the reasons is because of the Jersey people, and the other reason is because we had reasonably gentle regulations and low tax. Businesses prosper when they are left alone. You don't need to throw money at them. You just need to let them work. Every time you come in and say, oh, we have this new regulation and these new things that you need to fulfill, you make their life more difficult. They slow down, they stop. Every time you tax them, you make their life more difficult. So we are in a good position in Jersey to see businesses pop up. You cannot find a new business to order. We cannot go to the government and tell them, oh, finance, we're not so sure, let's do something else. That does not exist. The only thing you can do is, like nature, let everything grow and find what prospers, what ends up. So I'm for the minimum amount of government. Let businesses creating businesses easy, which is less and less the case. And the right businesses will prosper on their own. We've done it 15 or 20 times that I can count in Jersey, I am sure we will do it again.
And finally, Kirsten, on diversifying the economy.
I agree with Gregory that when governments come to picking and choosing industries, things tend to go wrong. We are in a position where we need to diversify our economy. We are far too wedded to the finance industry, which has seen a massive decline in productivity over the last 10 years, 25% in a decade. It shows the situation we are in. We've seen good work with the digital sector, and it's not been about funding, it's been about supporting. And I'm pleased to have seen what was a tiny sector begin to grow and to prosper in Jersey. And the way we did that was to harness and encourage the entrepreneurial spirit that Jersey absolutely has. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that one good thing that came out of the recession was that people started to think for themselves, my work with this company is not safe, therefore I will go it alone and I will try something new. And I've seen that happen a lot across people from different areas and different age groups. We've seen recently a new business, a new brewery, Stinky Bay Brewery, that's fantastic. We've seen the agriculture sector look to diversify, and all of this has come not from funding, but this has come from support and from encouragement. Where the government can help directly, I think, is things like helping with social security. When I started out on my own, it was clear that paying the stamp was suddenly twice as large as it had been before. And I think it would help entrepreneurs and anyone thinking of starting up a business if they were able to continue paying the amount they had paid before, as much as that will, have a consequence for social security itself.
Thank you. I saw Oliver Wilderspin, Eddie.
There will be many negatives that come out of Brexit, but there will also be many positives. So my question is, what opportunities do you see Brexit creating for Jersey and its economy?
Thank you. Gregory.
Well, we have two possibilities. One is to try to retain our status 100%, which might work. We're not in a bad position with the EU, and we could try to keep that. And the other one, of course, is to try to follow the UK in what they will do and try to find our place. One thing about Jersey is that apart from the banking industry, it's not terribly significant in the grand scheme of things. So if you go and try to negotiate something with France, like a free trade deal, you're not going to swamp their market with potatoes. You're not going to swamp their market with flowers. So it is quite possible that we would be able to negotiate different trade deals across the world because we're not a dangerous competitor. So again, depending on which side of the Brexit equation we decide to go with, there are quite a few opportunities that we could go and grab.
Thank you, Gregory. Kirsten, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Oliver. Excellent question. My first thoughts on Brexit are it's a fascinating subject because, and I personally believe Brexit is going to hit the UK incredibly hard. I think the UK is going to suffer. But out of that, I think, interestingly, Jersey could prosper. There are opportunities for Jersey, and we need to make sure that we take those opportunities. We're likely to see finance moving, not all finance. The City of London is going to continue, it will be strong, but we will see business moving to Frankfurt, we will see business moving to Paris, Dublin and Luxembourg, and as an international finance centre, we need to make sure that Jersey follows those opportunities where they are. Singapore and Hong Kong are also likely to pick up business as a result of Brexit, and we just need to make sure that the role that we already play, we just become better at it. More than anything, I am committed to the idea that Jersey must stand its ground. We need to make sure that whatever the UK chooses, we stand firm and ensure that nothing changes or as little as possible changes. We did not have a vote. We did not agree or disagree with Brexit. We're just a pawn in this game. What we must do is ensure that we come out better than we went into this process.
And finally, on Brexit, Sarah, please.
Some years ago, when the EU was first formed, the Åland Islands, which are between Finland and Sweden, they're Finnish islands for the Swedish-speaking, took the negotiating stance that they did not want to be part of the EU because they wanted to be allowed to trade in chewing tobacco, which was banned as an EU product. And because their electorate stood up and took the stance and said, we will not give up this, our national pastime of chewing tobacco, they managed to stay out of the EU completely and form their own trading agreements. We need to take a leaf out of their book. We need to take a very strong negotiating stance. We provide a great service and we need to carry on doing so. And I think that whoever gets the job of negotiating that contract, and personally I'd back KIRSTEN for that one. Yeah, I think that they need to be prepared to fight tooth and claw for us. That's how I see it.
Thank you, Sarah. Another question, please. I saw Bruce Thomas at the back there. Dave, behind you.
Good evening. I have one son left at home who has difficulty of planning his home of the future, and I'm afraid I'm having to give up half my house to him because of the situation of housing in the island. I'd like to know what our candidates here think about how to solve the housing problems in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. We'll start on that one with KIRSTEN.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Housing is going to be a very live subject for the next it'll be a live subject for a very long time, but the next 2 or 3 years in particular, because we're going to be looking at the island plan and reviewing the island plan. I mean, the first thing I think St. Lawrence can do is convene an island plan working group to make sure that, from our perspective, we're happy with what happens to our parish, because that's ultimately what's going to happen. The plan will decide certain things for our parish for us. As far as affordability of housing is concerned, I think we need to start by looking at the sites we have that are convertible. We need to look at the brownfield sites. We need to look at, for want of a better word, want of a better phrase, the lowest hanging fruit. There's not much left, but we do need to look at that because we need to ensure that the housing supply is as high as possible. The problem we have is that I don't believe, without concreting over the island, I don't believe that we'll ever get a housing supply which matches the demand. As well, on the affordability front, I think we need to pressure the construction industry to bring down the cost of the buildings that they are constructing. There are modern building techniques, prefabrication, things like this, which we haven't used properly in this island. And as a result, it keeps prices higher. But the problem we have is one of the market. And I'm not going to pretend I have an answer to that. We saw in yesterday's paper, it may have been today's paper, estate agents saying how wonderful the market is at the moment. But what that means is that it's very difficult for people to get onto the ladder. The best advice I could give anyone is to try and get on the ladder as early as possible.
Thank you, Sarah.
Even if you have 2 good incomes in a family in Jersey, you'll find it well nigh impossible to get a mortgage unless you have the means to save a deposit. If you're paying a very high rent, which you probably are, 90% of your income, in fact, it's impossible to save that money when you have to pay rent at the same time. What I would be interested in looking at is either buy-to-rent mortgages or a shared equity scheme of some sort. There was a shared equity scheme experiment a few years back, which seemed relatively successful, but was not carried on for some reason, and I couldn't tell you the reason why. rent-to-buy mortgages was something I first came across in New Zealand. Maybe the first 15 years of your tenancy would be called rent, and you would pay rent, and you would have to adhere to a tenancy agreement. After 15 years, that all that money that you've paid becomes your deposit or your equity, so that you're then able to pursue a mortgage. Until that time, you are a tenant, and of course, if you don't adhere to the agreement, then you may be asked to quit your property, and that money is still the rent that you've paid. I think we need to give the opportunity to people that are already living in states housing the opportunity to buy the homes that they've lived in all their lives. And that might be an opportunity for them to do so. You will see your children and your grandchildren going to university and then leaving this island, either because they can't work in the field that they've trained in or because they can't come back here and afford a house. We will certainly have to revisit every possible opportunity to get people onto the housing ladder.
Thank you. And Gregory, please.
Well, I can go quickly back on the schemes that KIRSTEN mentioned. Definitely first-time buyers. This is something that we should apply to almost all of the new builds in the island. Shared equity is a fantastic scheme. This is really, really nice. And if a state has reserves, it doesn't cost them anything. They're basically investing in real estate. So it's something that certainly should be done again. I know, I know very, very closely of the first trials, and they allowed many families to acquire houses, and that was really, really in their interest. One of the problems that is going to be a very parish problem is the one of development. And we've relied on Saint-Hélier to do most of the work for us in the past years. And now that it's our own children needing homes, we'll have to start thinking whether we want them to have homes in the parish. So I think that's going to be controversial. We'll have to change some of the local sites. And I think it's something that we should all be involved in. So we're talking about communication and talking with the parishioners. This is one project that we will really have to talk about all together. Do we want to build in the parish for our children?
Thank you. Another question, please. Saw a gentleman at the back, Eddie.
Hi, thank you. I've just moved to the parish from the Big Smoke for the country life. What's the candidates' 3 favourite things about St. Lawrence?
So the question is, what are the 3 favourite things for each candidate about living in St. Lawrence? Thank you, sir. We are going to start with Sarah on this one.
Well, the first thing would have to be St. Lawrence School, which my daughter attends, and I think is an absolutely fantastic school. I really enjoy what it has done for my daughter. You really put me on the spot with this one. In the north of the parish, I like the country lanes and the beautiful walks that are available, and I love the fact that we have the beautiful old parish church. The church communities, I think, would have to be one of my favourite things, because I've always found them to be extremely welcoming to somebody on their personal journey. The Glass Church, St. Matthew's Church, is my favourite destination when I want a quiet moment.
Thank you, Sarah. And we'll move on to Gregory, please.
Quite an interesting question. The first thing I like about St. Lawrence is the fact that it has this variety of countryside to beach. And it's absolutely lovely. I mean, I've been cycling into it non-stop for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and it's really fantastic to start in the fields and go all the way down to the beach. The second thing, little bit difficult. It's the parish hall. I am here today because this is my team. This is the people I've been serving, and I want to keep serving them. So everybody who works in the parish that I've worked with in the last 5 years, they're my friends, they're my colleagues, and I think they're the best thing about St. Lawrence. And the last thing is something I've discovered as a policeman and recently doing the canvassing. It's the farms and the farmers. When you've spent your morning running after stray pigs, you get a different aspect of life in the parish, or finding who's the owner of a particular cow, which refuses to leave the center of the street. And I think that's one of the best things about St. Lawrence is this: it's covered in farms and there's farmers everywhere.
Thank you. And Kirsten, your 3 favourite things, please.
I'm going to start with the thing you can't actually quite see properly. It's the night sky. I remember from the youngest age walking up at Claude La Chapelle, walking up the road there, amazed at the stars in the sky, how bright they are, and by the lack of light. I still do the same thing kind of 30 years later. I've never tired of the night sky in this parish. It's incredible. And it kind of bothers me that Sark has that night sky designation and we don't, because I think it's the airport, which is St. Peter's, destroying it for us. The second thing is, what, as we've all said, is the country lanes, the wildlife. It's the fact that when you're in amongst those country lanes, not only are they changing day after day, it's the fact that you're always discovering something new. It could be a new turn, or in my case, as I'm discovering from walking around the parish over the past few weeks, new houses that I didn't know existed. The wildlife is just outstanding as you walk around. It truly is, and again, brings joy on a daily basis. But the best thing about the parish is the people. I've been surrounded by all of you for 40 years, basically. And as a newcomer to the parish, I recommend one thing, and that's to get to know your neighbour and get to know their neighbour. And from there, you'll get to know their neighbour, and so on and so forth. And very quickly, you'll discover that you've got one hell of a network that's supporting you and your family as you live your life in this parish. It's truly incredible.
Thank you. Sarah, please. Oh, sorry, we've finished. Oh, I'm so bowled over by those responses. Oh, I'm the constable. Okay, everybody, we're on to question 10, and I saw Tina Palmer. Dave, at the very front, please. We're rattling through the questions now. The senatorial candidates were only able to answer 4 questions because, of course, there were 17 of them. So keep them coming. Okay, so question 10, the first person to answer this will be Kirsten. I think I'm getting, or Gregory. Gregory, yes, I'm getting confused. We're starting with Gregory. Okay, but let's hear the question, Sarah.
Right, well,
Tina.
Thank you all very much, and thank you very much for putting yourselves forward, because I can imagine it's no easy task representing the island in the parish and in the states of Jersey. I'd like to ask, if you're successful in your first term of office, what role would you like to hold in the states? Why? And what do you want to achieve?
Thank you, Tina. So starting with Gregory, I've got
Yes, thank you very much. It's the most difficult question I have to answer. I keep getting asked, and the problem is that I am completely new in the role, and I'm also extremely eclectic. So I find absolutely everything interesting. I haven't set my eyes on anything. I'm also quite reasonable, and I understand that you don't quite choose a role. There are elections, there are choices, people fight for some of them. The only thing I can say is that I want to work in the States, and I will not stay idle. I will do as many things as I can. So I'm very, very happy with any role I may be given or asked to do, and I will do it to the best of my abilities.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you, Tina. I've made no secret of the fact that I'm relishing the idea of going into scrutiny. I want to ask the questions. It's one of the reasons why I'm sitting here right now, is because I got fed up of hearing the right questions not being asked. From a scrutiny perspective, they've changed all the panels, so I do apologise for getting them wrong. Education is something that I really want to get involved in. I would like to make sure that we move towards a system where, I mentioned this in the speech, where teachers are freed from the burden of administration, where the focus is on teaching and helping our children, not burdening them with expectation of exams and tired teachers. So I'm really keen to get involved with education on the scrutiny side if possible. Economic development and the digital development is very interesting to me, but, and this has perhaps been kicked off by the recent matters in Westminster, which were constitutional matters. I'm genuinely bothered by the fact that the Houses of Parliament felt they could legislate for Jersey. It's something that we need to make sure doesn't happen. We need to make sure that we maintain that autonomy and continue to find our own way through and develop our own history. And so for that matter, the Constitutional Affairs Scrutiny Panel, I think it might be called, and I apologise if I got that wrong. So Constitutional Affairs and Education are two scrutiny panels I'd like to join.
Sarah, please.
I would like to assist to the Minister of the Environment, or work in scrutiny on the environment. My journey actually started with plastic bags. I would like to see all plastic bags banned. I think there are a lot of, with the environment, we are facing an iceberg. We can only see the tip of it. There are many things that we cannot do, but there are many little things that we can do, requiring people to find ecological alternatives to plastic bags is one of them. Having a proper plastic recycling plant is another. Diversifying our crops on Jersey farms is another one. I think hemp is a massive opportunity for us. It's ideal for Jersey soil. It's a crop that comes in the season, which is not the potato season. There is a massive, massive market for it. I know this because I sell the products every day for CBD oil. The problem will just be policing people not to harvest this illegally. There are so many things, very small things that we can do. People often make the convenient choice and not the right choice. So what we need to do is make the choice convenient for them. And I would like, one of the very first things I'd like to see done is a proper environmental review of everything, from issues very, very large, like sea lettuce and St. Albans Bay, to very, very small, like let's provide an alternative to plastic carrier bags, please. We no longer need them.
Thank you. And Gregory, please.
Sorry, I think I started it.
Did you? I'm really completely losing it this evening, aren't I? Okay, so we've had all of those. So, yeah, beg your pardon. Okay, moving on to another question, please. I see Mr. Harris here.
My name is Christopher Harris, and I have a question about the minimum wage. Ordinary people find it hard to make ends meet in Jersey because the cost of living is very high. In the United Kingdom, to save money on welfare expenditure, the Conservative government decided to help low-income families by increasing the national minimum wage to £8 an hour as it is at the moment, and it's going up to £9 an hour in 2 years' time. The minimum wage in Jersey is £7.50 an hour. The increases in the UK were done to reduce welfare expenditure, help low-income families, and encourage people back to work. Do the candidates think that Jersey should also increase its national minimum wage?
Thank you, Chris. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. I, like many people, actually think we need to go beyond that. And I am a supporter of the living wage. I think that there's just something not quite right about the idea that businesses don't pay people enough to live in the place where the business is taking place. And that, for me, needs to stop, because what happens is that the government ends up subsidising the business. And Jersey doesn't like subsidies. I don't really like subsidies either. However, to move towards a living wage, we have to do it carefully, and we have to do it hand in hand with those sectors which would find it difficult. There is no question that tourism, hospitality, agriculture could not make that jump next week. They would find it, they would suffer, and businesses would close. So from my perspective, I really do want Jersey to, and really I guess we've started down the path of moving towards a living wage, but we need to listen to the businesses which will find it tough, and we need to help them and guide them to do that the best way they can, because I totally agree. It will cut the income support payments doing so, and it will stop government subsidising business.
The Reform Party has a very clear policy on this, that we would like to introduce a living wage which would be for £10 an hour by the end of 2020. I have to be honest with you, I do have my questions about that, because I know as a person who works in retail that many retail businesses would not be able to support that. What they would immediately do would be cut the amount of working hours that you have, so then you would still not be able to make a living wage. They would take the opportunity to call it a flexible workforce, offer you a part-time contract, and have many people working part-time so that they would always have cover. Kirsten is quite right. If you have a person who's working all the hours that they can and they still cannot make ends meet, there is something wrong with the cost of living in Jersey. It is too high. You are, in effect, what you're paying in your tax contribution to income support is supporting people, supporting businesses, basically, who pay low wages. Unfortunately, without taking other measures to squash the cost of living, which is something that we must look at, increasing the living wage alone won't work. We need to address other things in our environment which can help to bring down the cost of living. I think that everybody who is currently living in social, so inverted commas, affordable housing should have access to green technology which supports their electricity bill, for example. Something we can look at.
Well, I agree with both my colleagues. It is important to have a minimum wage that is attractive. Coming from France, you're talking about a country where being unemployed is actually much more comfortable than living on minimum wage, and that has pretty much destroyed our country. So we definitely don't want the same thing to happen in Jersey, and we need a minimum wage that is attractive to people. We need a minimum wage that allows them to live at a living wage at a reasonable standard. Of course, the immediate problem with that is that bringing up the minimum wage instantly creates inflation. All the basic things that we need will cost more, and the cost of living rises, and it's an unending circle. So it is something that is actually quite difficult to deal with. In general, I think I would support anything to support them, to improve the minimum wage, even given the difficulties.
Any further questions, please? Eddie, thank you. I can't see who that person is.
Hello, I'm Sue Falloon. I'd like to ask, what would you like to see at Fort Regent? And do you support the skateboard park?
Yes, I do support the skateboard park, absolutely, because there are not enough outdoor facilities for our children and teenagers as there is. There just aren't enough places for them to go and gather and be teenagers and do what teenagers are supposed to do, which is play. Otherwise, you have teenagers which will live perpetually on the internet and playing games on the internet. And personally, I'm not a fan of computer games. They don't encourage you to learn the skills of everyday talking to people and living a life where you have to interact with other real living beings. Fort Regent, I would love to see Fort Regent used as a test bed for solar technology. We have this iconic, wonderful roof, which would look fantastic, all decked out with solar tiles. And I'd love to see a company, a local company or a company come in from outside and use it as a test bed for technology. It gets all the sunshine that we have in the island, 100% of the year, and it would make an ideal spot for testing that technology. It could even have the potential to provide all the electricity needed for lighting and heating Fort Regent for it to carry on being a centre of sporting activities. And I would like to see it made into a centre of sporting excellence. We have, you know, this place with ideal parking nearby and everyone can see it, and it's a beautiful building and it needs to be upkept. Why can't we use that roof for that purpose?
Thank you, Sarah. Gregory, please.
Yes, I apologize. I'm not terribly familiar with the new skateboard park project. I know that the old one is being demolished. But yes, I favor one, of course. Anything that is free and where children can go and gather is an excellent thing. It's Jersey. We should definitely do this one. And if we have any other ideas, develop them as well. Fort Regent, I have seen the development project, the grandiose development project. I'm a little bit worried that the state should get involved in something like that. I think if we want Fort Regent developed, we should encourage private companies to try to develop it. It's a huge project, and I am not sure that if the government ever puts the amount of money that is needed to work on it, they will see it back in use. I like it a lot, but it's also something that is in the memories of the Jersey people as what it was in the 70s. And I don't think we'll see the cable cars again. I'm really, really sorry about that. So we have to look at it and think about it as something different, something new.
It's an excellent question, because Fort Regent formed such an important part of my childhood all the way up into the 20s, because actually Fort Regent, you can go online and see them. There are fantastic videos from the 1990s of Fort Regent and the kind of funfair that it still had and that sort of thing. So it's really quite recent that it's fallen into disuse and disrepair in the main, because obviously it is still used for concerts and it is used for sport. I believe that's how we should continue to use it. It's an area which, as I said, for me, I associate with my childhood. I associate with healthy living, with swimming, with doing sport, running around, and I really think we should try and continue that use. However, we need to use it a lot better than we are at the moment. It's the swimming pool. It's just scandalous that it's still sitting there derelict. It needs to come down. That could be a good place for a skate park. And yes, I'd love to see a skate park, because again, that's something which since my childhood I've seen develop. We used to use a skate ramp at Quavara in the youth club there. And now we've actually had a skate park down on the harbour, and now we're talking about building a proper one. That's fantastic as far as I'm concerned, and Sarah's absolutely right. We always need to give young people somewhere outdoors to play around away from their parents, because no matter what you do, when they're 15, 16, they don't want to be playing around anywhere near their parents. So I don't have final answers, but I believe sport and health should be what are promoted there, and a skate park certainly.
Any more questions, please? Mrs. Bingle.
Good evening, everybody. But just moving on with the same subject of the living wage, which of course is hopefully achievable for everybody. With regards to having a small business, so for example, having a minimum of 5 or a maximum of 5 employees, 5 to 10 employees, What incentive do you think should be given to small businesses to enable them to pay minimum wage, but also help them not have to put that cost onto their clients as well, which will then, of course, increase the cost of living or help increase the cost of living? So what incentives do you think we should be putting in place, for example, social security contributions for small businesses and so on?
Thank you. We'll start with Gregory on that one, please.
Well, I have been a businessman all my life, but it's always been small businesses. The maximum of employees I've ever had was 10, so I feel very much in that category. You've answered your own question. One of the easiest things that the states can do for small businesses is work on Social Security and make sure that you pay an absolute minimum of it. It's when you start and you have your first salaries to sign, to then have to make a second check for the states while I was there. And of course in France, the Social Security check that you do to the state is 50%. So you give 1,000 euro to an employee and then you give 1,000 euro to the state. And that kills small businesses almost instantly. It was a little bit better in the UK and better in other countries. And it's quite nice in Jersey. But of course, if we want to help small businesses, that's the first thing we can do. And the second thing, again, we do need to help small businesses. We do need to help small businesses because they grow to become larger, and that's the business of the future in Jersey is starting today with 5 employees. It exists today. It's somewhere in the street with 5 employees and struggling to open a bank account and struggling to create a company and struggling to pay Social Security. So that's the best way that we can find the next business for Jersey.
Thank you, Ms. Bingle. Small businesses, I think the first thing we can do is listen to them a bit harder. What really concerns me about the government is that when they legislate for businesses, is that they certainly listen to the large businesses. They definitely do talk to the Chamber of Commerce and Institute of Directors, but I don't think they're necessarily quite effective enough at carrying the voice of small business. An example of that might be recently the maternity pay. Whilst I am also a supporter of maternity pay, I do know the effect on small businesses is enormous. Suddenly being asked to carry the wage of somebody who's going to be missing for months has an effect. It might not be one that we want to be there, but it's there. You can't deny it. And this sort of reality and dealing with reality is really important. So I think consultation is the very first thing we need to do. We've mentioned Social Security. I mentioned that, Gregory mentioned that earlier, so I think we all agreed on that. But another thing perhaps we could look at, and this opens up a wider can of worms, is GST. Whether we can, I'm wondering in general, not just to do with businesses, but if it's time to look at using GST in a more targeted manner. At the moment, we have one size-fits-all GST, and I understand that it's simple to administer. But I'm beginning to wonder if we should be looking at things, and so perhaps we can use it in some way to help businesses by, enabling some businesses to have a lower rate to not pay it, that sort of thing. I don't know, but I'm just wondering if those are the sorts of levers we can start to pull: Social Security, GST, that sort of thing, just to help businesses. But more than anything, it's about listening, because I'm convinced small businesses aren't listened to enough.
Number 4 in the manifesto pledges of the Reform Party. I'll read it to you. Reduce social security contributions for the self-employed and gradually increase the rate for high earners to match the rate paid by low and middle earners. The idea of this is that by bringing in the high earners and by removing the cap on social security contributions will reduce the amount of money which is the taxpayer contribution to Social Security. By reducing the amount that the taxpayer has to contribute to the Social Security bill, that will free up a great deal of money to be spent elsewhere. And perhaps we could target some of that money towards incentivising, as you said, small businesses to be able to pay a higher wage. That's just
an idea of where some of that money might be spent. Kirsten's quite right. Consultation is the way to go. We need to speak to small businesses. Otherwise, it will end up, the burden of the work will end up falling on the salaried person and not the person who's earning the wage. But thank you for the question. Very interesting.
Are there any more questions, please? See Abby.
Hello, Abigail Glairtell. Just because we're using so many food banks now, don't you think it's time that GST was removed from our essential commodities like food, water and heating?
Thank you, Abby. Kirsten. Yep, Kirsten to start.
Yes, thank you, Abby. It's something that I just mentioned in my previous answer, and you'll see it in my manifesto as well. I think we need to start exploring this. I really do understand why the government, when they brought in GST, did a flat rate across all items, no exceptions. There was a huge debate about it at the time, and it's something that really got people. The reason is it's simple to administer, and that is understandable. It costs all of us less because of that. But given the cost of living, and given the problem that we have with wages, especially at the low end of the spectrum, not keeping up with the cost of living, we need to explore it. We need to run those models. I can't tell you whether it's something we should do, but I absolutely am committed to looking at it and making sure the government looks at it, because when it comes to the cost of medicines, the cost of sanitary items, the cost of children's clothing, the cost of nappies, things like this, they really, that and food, that really hits hard. And it absolutely, that's where GST is regressive. It's at that end of the spectrum, because that's where it hits the poorest hardest. On the other end of the spectrum, luxury items, something which costs £30,000, that potentially could be subject to a slightly higher rate of GST to make up the loss. I don't know, because all of this, if you're doing it, all of this increases the cost of administration and increases the cost of running GST. So it's got to be looked at carefully. I couldn't commit either way. I can commit to absolutely wanting the government to look at it.
Sarah.
I think it would increase our competitiveness, and certainly in small businesses where you have to compete with Amazon, who's automatically 5% cheaper, 6% cheaper than buying it in a shop on the high street or from a local person. I would like to see GST removed altogether. I do think it's a completely regressive tax, and it was introduced to address, there's a Philippo's black hole, did he call it? And that black hole is still there, to my knowledge. It hasn't done a darn thing except make poor people poorer. One of the very first item on our manifesto pledge is reformation of the income tax system to introduce a single marginal rate of 25%, which means that 95% of us will be paying about the same, and then 5% of people who are earning millions in Jersey will be asked to contribute more tax than they are currently paying. And I think that the amount of income that will bring to us would certainly allow us to erase GST. Of course, that hasn't been put forward by the party. That's just my personal idea. But yes, I think we should definitely be revisiting where we are with that.
Thank you, Gregory.
It's a very difficult problem. I was a little bit dubious when I saw GST being introduced and being the same across all products. There are very, very few countries where that is the case. And I think that somehow, for some reason, we try to copy the American system and stay clear of the UK and European system. Yes, I know that there was a will for it not to be VAT. But I still don't understand it. I think we should avoid it, definitely food, water, medical supplies. And the problem is whether we can now work on GST once it's been done, because typically when you take it off, businesses don't necessarily immediately lower their prices. If it was 20% and if you took it off, that it would be very visible and everybody would have to do it. But 5%, it's very, very likely that the prices will not change. So you reduce an income in tax, and then the prices in the street are going to be exactly the same. It's very difficult to do. We can look at GST in a wider way, but again, I'm quite afraid that if we do so, we will just increase it. The government in general will see it as a fantastic opportunity to get more taxes, and they may take it a little bit from food, but then they will add it usually to something else. So whether we want to actually kick the can of worm, I'm not quite sure. I don't like it. It's not a tax that I'm very keen on. But again, is it worth changing it? All right.
Have we got a 16th question, please? This gentleman in the front, David, please. Just...
I'm David Moon. I'd like to ask a question on the 0-10 tax system and whether the candidates would support that there should be a panel representing all starters of society, not just the finance industry, to review the system, which at the moment is really not equitable in that ordinary residents pay tax at 20%, and businesses and wealthy residents can shelter their assets and businesses through companies and not pay any tax, and banks and finance companies, etc., pay tax at half the rate, 10%. And old codgers like myself, although well past the retirement age, we're still having to pay the old age contribution, which seems we will never get the benefit of.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. Can I just check that all candidates understood, because it was quite a long question. You all read? Yep, okay, and it's Sarah to begin answering this one.
Thank you, sir, and I do sympathise. If you've contributed all your life, you should be entitled to the benefits of that when you reach your senior years, absolutely. Unfortunately, I think 0-10 is here to stay, because companies that come here to invest their money require that 0% offering of ours and rely on that in order to stay here and be profitable to us. I know that there's no plan on the part of the Reform Party to change that. However, being a person who is not particularly interested in the finance industry, I don't have a great deal to say about that from a personal level. So I'll pass it to my more knowledgeable colleagues here.
Okay, so the next person to answer is Gregory.
Okay, I'll start with pensions. I think that's an easy one. Pensioners are an easy target, and the government has taken advantage of that to reduce your pensions. And unfortunately, it's one of the incomes that has not followed the rest. So I would definitely want to have a good look at pensions and to make sure. I mean, we're talking about minimum wage, and we have a pension that is actually below the minimum wage. You know, that makes absolutely no sense. So definitely that's something I would really like to get a personal look at and see if we can solve. 0-10, I never understood it. I think I'm smart enough, I can count. I've lived in, among other things, in what we would call at the time tax havens. I've lived in Hong Kong, I've lived in Panama. And in those countries, we had offshore business and inshore business. So if you made business that was completely out of the place, you didn't need any of the utilities, you didn't conduct business in the country, you would pay no tax. And if you did something in the country and used the utilities and used the police and traveled in the country, then you would pay some tax. And I found it extraordinary that the EU managed to persuade us that we couldn't do that here. We should be able to do it. We should be able to offer banks a system where everything that they do offshore is not taxed. But any business conducting business in Jersey, physically, should pay a small tax. Because, again, that's a lucky thing, so, oops.
You've got another 20 seconds. Or...
Oh, sorry, because it's a lucky thing that dividends are applied to income tax. So if you're local, have a local business, and your local business pays, for example, 10%, that is deducted from your own personal tax. So it's almost transparent to locals. But of course, somebody conducting a local business from outside would then have to pay it, which is what we are trying to look for.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. I'm in favour of a review of our tax system, full stop. I do appreciate why we have 010. I do understand that it is there to protect Jersey's finance industry, to ensure that we comply with pressure from the EU, from the UK and the OECD. And those are the sorts of dances we're always going to have to do as long as we have a thriving finance centre here. International pressure is what the UK is discovering. No one can stand completely alone in this world. You will always be forced in some way or shape or form. If you want to trade with other people, you'll always be forced to kind of bow to some elements of their rules. But we do need a review of the tax system here. We need a tax system which I believe is fairer. I've seen low and middle income Jersey being squeezed hugely over the past 10 years. But more than anything, we need something which is simpler, which isn't just having little bits of tax added on here, there, a charge everywhere else. This is what I find quite crazy at the moment. And the long-term care charge that you mentioned is exactly that. It is exactly that. It's just adding a little bit. It's doing taxation by in the way that you would a patchwork quilt, and it doesn't work in Jersey. So we do need a wholesale review. The retail tax is a fantastic example of, in my view, how not to do a tax system. Just thinking it up on the hoof and thinking, oh, we'll grab some money there. That's going to have an effect across the island. We talked about the living wage and its effect on retail. 20% tax is going to have an effect on retail. It's going to make, whilst we're trying to attract different supermarkets and different brands here to Jersey, it's going to put them off coming here. So to some extent, we're always in danger of shooting ourselves in the foot on these things. So we need a commission, we need a review of the entire tax system, and we need to come up with something which is simple, which is fair and understandable, and definitely which does, enable the finance industry to keep going, because we're always going to have to dance that particular dance.
Any more for any more? You've had a question, but if there's no, I see Mr. Polo here in the front, Dave. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Rodney Polo. Can you hear me?
Hold it close to yourself.
Oh, right.
That's it.
Do you think that the Council of Ministers, as we've got now, should be senators only, or do you think the constables, the deputies, should join in on this? Because they've only been voted in by a few people, whereas the senators are voted in by all of the island.
Thank you. The lead on this is Gregory.
That's lucky. I've got a strong opinion about this. In principle, yes, definitely. I think we have 3 tiers of politicians, and I think it works extremely well that way. We've got senators who are elected by the whole island, and they have a global mandate to be ministers, so the minister should be chosen, and of course the chief minister should be chosen from them according to his performance. We have deputy, and deputy also work in the States, but representing a much smaller community, a community that is small enough for them to know. And I think that is extremely important. I am against super constituency. I think we should have as many, we should represent as many people as we can actually see, and meet. More than that, then it becomes artificial. We're just representing statistics. And then we have the constables. And I have a personal idea about this. The constables of all the politicians are the ones that are closest to the people. Every problem that you have ends up on their lap every day. And they are able to bring that to the States. I keep saying this, many of you may have heard it from me before. You come to see me as a centenaire with a parking ticket, the lowliest of all fines, and you argue about the yellow line. On Monday, we have a police meeting, and I will be talking about this yellow line with the constable. And on Tuesday, she will be at the States. And she actually, the distance between the lowest problem in the island and the head of state is 2 people. And I think that is extraordinary, and it is absolutely something that we should cherish. The one last answer to this. If you want something done, give it to a busy person to do. And that's the same in the States. And what they realize is that there are some politicians, whatever they are, whether they're connétables or deputies or senators, who just work a little bit harder. And it would be a shame not to use these to do the things that need to be done.
The Council of Ministers, I don't think it would work if it was senators only in a Council of Ministers. We've got, I forget how many ministries there are going to be now, but there are 8 senators. You would then have to allocate 1 to a ministry each, and that wouldn't always work depending on the personalities that get in, how they'll work with the Chief Minister. So I think you're always going to have deputies and potentially constables, although I'll come to that in a second. You're always going to have deputies taking up ministerial roles, just for purely practical purposes, if nothing else. I think it would be worthwhile, and I do apologise, but not having constables in ministerial positions. It does seem to me that constables running a parish, doing state's work, and being in a ministry is just way too much. As much as busy people get things done, busy people also get to a point where they can't do any more. So I don't think constables should be in a ministry. Their ministry is here in the parish. That's the constable's ministry, and I know you're doing fine work in as an assistant minister for Home Affairs, but yeah, I don't think that should be the case. So certainly, I think you have to have deputies available for ministries. I think it's the only practical way forward. What I do think we need is to look at the way the senatorial elections take place. I was here a week ago for the Hustings, and as much as Connétable did an amazing job hosting that meeting, for all practical purposes, it was essentially a waste of time. Listening to 17 people for 3 minutes and then listening to 17 people answer 4 questions for 2 minutes each. You don't learn very much at all. So we perhaps need to look at that and just rework the way senatorial elections take place. Thank you.
I'm not making such a good job tonight. Sarah, please.
As we've already said tonight, it is good to have democracy in St. Lawrence. It means we're actually having an election. We're not having 2 people walk in unopposed. It is wrong that one person should have to get an island mandate of over 3,000 votes and somebody else should walk in St. Mary with 250. I would like to see electoral reform along the lines of what was proposed back in 2012, an island broadly divided into 5 different areas with proportional representation, and that might mean reducing the amount of people that sit in the chamber, and it might mean turning all offices into one office, so just senators or just deputies, whatever you would like to call them. I agree that the ministry of the constable is in the parish, and that the constable should be the person who liaises with the people sitting in the chamber and brings the concerns of the parish to the chamber. That should be a great point of liaison. The person who lives here and deals with you day to day with all your issues should be able to take that to the appropriate office within the states. I don't think that more centralisation along that lines would destroy the character of the parish. The character of the parish is in the people in it, and the the communities that are already invested here, of different people, of churches, of meeting groups, of musicians, of, you know, the Ladies Action Group. I think you're fantastic. The character of the parish is defined by its people, not defined as a group of voters. I think personally that proportional representation will be the way to go with that, and the Council of Ministers should therefore not be defined by senator or deputy, but just by elected politician.
Is there anybody who hasn't asked a question who would like to ask one? I've got Dr. Mara in the front, keen to ask another question. I see Peter Lemarinel, Eddie. This is definitely you.
Good evening, Peter Lemarinel speaking. We've spoken about Fort Regent and we've spoken about Skateboard Park, and there has been talk of mainly in the senatorial husting about sport. Do you think that the parish should be involved and have a sport facility, be it a modest one, an outdoor one, so that the people of the parish of all ages could walk to it rather than commuting to somewhere on the other side of the island?
Thank you, Peter.
We do have the playing fields and we have the community centre, and they are modest and they are good. I was there just yesterday. The Battle of Flowers were there, you know, making the floats. There's football team practicing in the park, St Lawrence football team practicing in the park. So we do have something. I assume you're thinking of something along the lines of St John's Recreation Ground, perhaps, which is larger, has more facilities, and the problem there is just availability of land and space and cost. Just a few things to go in there. I would be in favour of anything we can do to provide more sporting and outdoor facilities in the parish, but we have to be realistic about the land that we have, the cost that would be, that would create, and so, you know, if anyone wants to donate land to the parish for that purpose, I'm sure we'd gratefully receive it. Thank you.
Yes, we do. May I say what a wonderful job has been done in Millbrook Park of the junior play park. Absolutely fantastic, beautiful. The kids love it. It's full all the time. And there is more work going on there on the paddling pool at the end of the year. Tamber Park. What happened recently when Tamber Park wanted to form a big expansion, and they wanted to pay for the large expansion of all those facilities, which is not just sporting, but I appreciate, but definitely family orientated. They wanted to pay for that by building some houses, but that didn't happen, did it? Because people didn't want those houses built in their backyard. Again, it's like Kirsten said, it's availability of land, it's the siting of it, and do people want it nearby, and will people actually attend it and use it, which dictates whether they would like it nearby or not. I would love to see another children's play park in the north of the parish somewhere, accessible to all the housing estates which are built north and south of St Lawrence School. And I'd love to see it, you know, more accessible by walking and cycling routes. Yes, there should be more facilities in the island, and I think something like St John's Centre, as you mentioned, would probably go down very well in the parish, but where will we find the place for it? Does anybody have any ideas on that? Somebody will.
Thank you, Gregory.
Yes, definitely. It is a parish issue, but of course, if one of us in government could help with that, I'm sure that we would provide any help that we could. But that is it. Other than wishing for it and hoping that we can improve the facilities that we have, there's not much that we can do. If we find ourselves in the position to do so, yes, of course, definitely.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, sorry, Jenny. Jenny Cartwright, Dave, please.
Good evening. Would the candidates give their views on the ongoing plans for the hospital?
Thank you. Yeah, Kirsten said he thought they'd escaped us. We're starting with Sarah on this one.
Not a brick should be laid until they have consulted the hospital staff, who have not been consulted at all. People who work there regularly, every day, should have a say and definitely have an opinion about where the hospital should be built. Personally, I would have been in favour of the waterfront because a clean build ends up £30 million cheaper. Nowadays in the UK, hospitals are not built in town centres, they are built on the outskirts because the arteries are there to feed them. I think that a great deal of money has been wasted on the whole process. There have been sites that people are proposing now that which never even came up in the consultation, like People's Park, for example. If you built a new hospital there, you turn the current hospital into a park. One of the other candidates in the party has actually been in hospital for the past 3 weeks. And she said the noise of the work that is going on there currently is absolutely terrible. How the staff and the patients can function in that atmosphere of building work and maintenance going on is beyond me. And how people manage to recover in that atmosphere, I just do not know. So the ongoing work on that site, I just think is completely wrong. They should not be redeveloping a site while it's still being used as a hospital. I think a clean build would have been a far better way to go.
Thank you, Gregory.
Yes, I hope that we would avoid this one, but we shall face it. I have spent a lot of time trying to go through all the documentation that has been produced by the states about the hospital, and I'm probably through about 20 or 25% of it. There are 1,000 pages of report produced over the last 10 years about the hospital. The only thing I can do is have faith in the people who produced those reports, reviewed those reports, worked on this project for 10 years, and decided that building in town was the best solution. Instinctively, I can think of many other places that it would have worked. As a developer, I would have chosen the waterfront as a first choice, obviously. But this was disregarded for many, many reasons. If you cannot have people agree to something, it's a compromise. And a good compromise happens when everybody is slightly unhappy about the results. And I think that this proposal, the town proposal, is symptomatic of that. Nobody will completely like it because it is a compromise. But every other site was also a compromise, and one that was actually worse. I think we need to put that behind us and now start at building that hospital. It is a very, very complex project. Like Sarah, I would really like to involve the people who are actually working in it, in that project. It's very, very too easy to disregard. You build systems and then you forget about the people who actually do it every day and have a much better idea of what they need. So let's build a hospital in town, let's get through that and now try to make it as cheap as possible and as useful as possible.
I agree with both the candidates there that it doesn't feel quite the right place for it to be in Gloucester Street in terms of the way it's going to be built and the noise and that sort of thing. But I also agree with Gregory that at some point you have to put faith in the people who have done the reports, who have helped make these decisions. The states have revisited this decision recently. They voted again to continue with the work. If I get into the states, I have no intention of trying to reopen that. What I am more interested in is ensuring we have a long-term healthcare strategy that is going to ensure that that hospital is used to its best and makes use of the communities we have, and the parish communities in particular, to help deliver healthcare that's both physical and mental healthcare across the island in the most efficient, most compassionate, and most dignified ways possible. Because for me, I sometimes wonder if we're forgetting about why we actually need a hospital. We need a hospital to deliver healthcare. That's the only reason we need a hospital. It's you have a car to travel. Okay, we seem to be getting a bit fixated about the building, about the hospital and the materials, and forgetting the reason why we're doing this in the first place. So if I get in, I will certainly be looking to make sure that there are no overspends on that hospital, that it is built on time. But more than anything, I will be looking to whoever is the health minister to deliver on a long-term healthcare strategy that covers life from the beginning to the very end of our lives, and makes use of our communities to help deliver that healthcare in the most efficient ways possible.
Any more? I see somebody at the back, Dave, in the back row there.
I'm Catherine Paul. I was just wondering what the candidates' views on euthanasia was.
No, it starts with Gregory, doesn't it? Gregory?
It's an interesting question. It's very quick for me. I believe that you should be the master of your own life.
Thank you.
It's an interesting subject, which actually I haven't really noticed on the political scene, this question on the political scene in Jersey at all until about a week ago. And suddenly, and I may have missed it, but suddenly it's here. I've heard it on national news a long time. I've seen it in Guernsey, but in Jersey it's not, to my knowledge, been a huge topic of interest. It has become recently, and I had the joy and the pleasure of trying to explain to my daughter what euthanasia was recently, and immediately just trying to make that explanation. You try and tell a child what euthanasia is and explain to them why it's an incredibly difficult subject to deal with. And, you know, that's where I come from on this. I agree with Gregory. I feel my instinct is to feel like you should be the master of your own life. But there are so many problems with that, of saying that. There are problems of people who aren't in a position to decide their fate. There are problems of people who want to take advantage of somebody's weakened state to decide their fate for them. And these things need to be discussed. So euthanasia is definitely not something I'm going to say, yes, I'm for it, or no, I am against it, because it's far too complex. And if you're not sure whether it's that complex, try explaining it to a child, and then you'll find it easy.
It's a really difficult one, isn't it? And it touches every individual in a different way. Everybody's on their own personal spiritual journey. And a lot of people will disagree with it on their own particular moral grounds, referring to their own religion. Whether or not you are a Christian or a Muslim is, you know, to me, the important thing is that everybody should be allowed the choice to follow their own path. And a lot of people, you know, will disagree with this on the grounds that they are a Christian or where they are on their own spiritual path. What I would say, if I was in the position of being in terminal illness, and I don't know. Unfortunately, I've never been put in that position, and I hope never to be in that position. But what I do think is that we need to allow people the opportunity to make their own choice. That is, after all, the virtue of being human. This is what I believe, the right that God gave you to make your own choice. That's where I stand.
Anyone else before I call Dr. Mara? Do you still have a question? Yep. So does anybody else want to ask a first question? If not, then Eddie, if you can come down to Paul at the front, please.
Thank you, Deputy. My question is, oh, I thought you sat on my origami there. My question is, how would you limit population? How would you limit population?
How would you limit population?
Limits the population.
Well, how would you limit your own population?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no.
Okay, I'm going to call Kirsten to start the answers.
I think people are wondering if there's a link between your question and the lady's question at the back. Actually, you've kind of provided me with a loaded question because you said, how would you limit it, which assumes that I therefore want to limit it. I do, actually, but you have kind of put that in there. This is going to be one of the first things every new candidate has to deal with when they enter the States. The migration policy is one of the first things we'll deal with in September for those of us who get in. And to be honest, it looks like people are going down the road of work permits straight away. I've put it in my manifesto. I think we need to try work permits. I think that by doing so, it actually frees us up to end another problem in Jersey, which is the two-tier housing system. I've always had an issue that by using the housing system as a proxy for the migration system, we've condemned people to living in poor quality accommodation. By having work permits, essentially you're saying at the door, you may come in, you may work, you may enter the open market as far as housing is concerned. And I think that's what we should do if that's the case. My concern with work permits is the business side of it. How do we make sure that every business, especially the small businesses, how do we make sure that every business gets the people they need to work and perform effectively? Government doesn't have a good track record on that front. The Population Office at the moment, I know, has stood on the ambitions, squashed the ambitions of countless small businesses in this island, whilst at the same time making sure that large businesses are doing absolutely very well, thank you very much. So whatever happens in that population debate, assuming we go down the route of work permits, I will want to see a mechanism which ensures that businesses, particularly the smaller ones, are properly listened to and their needs understood before we say, no, you can't have someone working your business from outside the island.
Again, this is not something that occurs with the manifesto, but it is high on the list of priorities. I think we're looking at looking for other places that have had similar models of work permits, such as on Nova Guernsey, and the press on that is a very mixed opinion. Some people think it's working very well, and some people think it isn't working very well at all. But I think we need to examine all the opportunities there to see what we can take from that in terms of offering work permits. What I do think is that we should be very firm with our targets. Reform is saying net migration of 300 a year. And you've got to understand that thousands of people leave every year and thousands of people come here. What we should be doing is assessing something. I'm just posing possibilities here. Say a 4-year permit for somebody who is coming and going in the tourism industry. So once your 4-year permit is up, that is it, you may not return again. Maybe starting at 8 or 10 years for somebody who's in a highly qualified job like in nursing or medicine. But again, it's a huge can of worms, and somebody will have to be responsible for administering all of that. Who gets work permits, who can recruit, who gets what type of permit. It is a huge job, but I think it is something that we need to tackle sooner rather than later, and I think that a department or a set of people will have to be set to work on organising that and administering it as soon as possible.
Indeed, it's one of the first problems that the new government will have to deal with. The proposal has been put forward and it's being discussed in September. The content of it is basically work permits, 9 months and 4 years. I have seen them from close up in Guernsey, and the 9 months permit is a very easy thing to do. That's not a problem. Seasonal workers, they come in for the money, they go back, they change, they can come again. That's not a big issue. The 4 years permits are a very, very big problem. 4 years is just about enough time to establish yourself somewhere. And I've seen well, there's been famous cases in Guernsey of the perfect schoolmistress having found a partner in Guernsey, being loved by all children, but at the end of her contract, and that was it. You have to go. You just have to leave. There'll be many human problems like that. Also, it does limit the quality of the people you can bring in. If you need a brain surgeon in Jersey and you say, oh, you can live here for 4 years and then you have to go away and go somewhere else, it's very, very difficult to attract them. So we get a different quality of workers. I think it will happen. I think the population wants it. It's one of the first things that we get told when we knock on doors. So we will have to establish something. We'll have to work hard to try to make it work so that it is humane, so that it is nice to the people who come, and allows us to have the quality of workers that we need.
Are there any more questions before we wind up this evening? No? Okay, so if there are no more questions forthcoming, I'd like to remind you all that if you need reminding, certainly the candidates don't, that the election is 2 weeks today. The polling station is here for St Lawrence. It opens at 8 o'clock in the morning and closes at 8 p.m. Contrary to the misleading information, unfortunately, in the candidates' manifesto document that was sent out by vote.je, and they have apologised profusely for this, we are all able to vote for 2 deputies in St Lawrence, okay? It does say in the document that we may vote for 1 only, but it is certainly 2 deputies. And the candidates have asked me just to emphasise that, so that you can cast your votes for 2 of them. I think they've done really well this evening. Thank you very much.